It's happening. Adults across the country can buy cannabis. People have a lot of questions, so I invite some friends over to talk about it. Joining me today is Michael Lickver from Auxly.
That's an area where we might fall behind if we're not careful.
Anthony George, a stock market trader.
It could be a great change for all of us as a country. You know, to actually enjoy shit again.
And Tamara Hirsh, a dispensary founder.
He's taken a completely different stance on everything else that he's ever done.
I'm Chuck Rafici, and we're talking the biz. Canada is currently a global leader in the cannabis market. How long is that going to last?
Well, if we continue to be the only country in the world that's legal where we can develop all this intellectual property on the new ways to grow, it'll last a lifetime. It'll be the biggest head start ever. It'll be the Silicon Valley of weed.
We've got a great head start, but what was it, yesterday or the day before? Trump basically backpedaled a little bit and changed his MO and appealed to the people in talking about pharmacies and making them liable and responsible and accountable to the harm that they create. Where did this come from? What do you think he's gearing up for?
He's not going legal, Tamara. You want him to go legal.
He's taking a completely different stance on everything else that he's ever done.
But his financial stuff, he is stopping money from going around the world into cannabis.
Of course, until he positions himself and, you know.
But he can't do it with his politics. He's not going to do it. We have a 4-year window here, at least.
His support went up 17% because of that. 17%, huge.
So is U.S. policy or U.S.'s current and continued prohibition of cannabis, is that the singular factor that's making Canada a leader today? Is that our biggest threat? Is that our only threat?
I would say it's a huge one considering the amount of experience there. Cali is the longest standing place to have accepted or embraced, like BC is the Cali of Canada, but I mean, a lot of the BC knowledge has come from California.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. being fenced in has been a great gift for the Canadian industry.
Absolutely.
I think it really depends on what you mean by global leader. I think there's several buckets you can look at, and there's several other areas in the world and regions that are going to catch up very quickly if given the chance. So if we're talking about raising capital, we're the global leader for now. If the U.S. opens its doors, they'll probably replace us. If we're talking about research and development, Israel's probably ahead of everybody and has always been and probably always will be. German efficiency is pretty damn good, so if they want to ramp up, and they've been very, very slow to do it, but eventually. And then you got to look at cultivation. You know, we have a fantastic head start on all of those buckets, maybe other than the R&D. We're about 50 or 60 years behind there, but we're going to be able to maintain it for a while.
But you're going to have licenses in Argentina, but they're not going to grow. So Canada's going to be able to export it into Argentina. The Canadian companies are going to get in there, they're going to have the foothold. And there's going to be a lot of countries like that out of the gate. They don't want to grow initially, right?
I mean, to Mike's point then, you know, when the U.S. does open up, I mean, how defensible is our lead from the capital markets side? If the client lists are here, if the Canadian companies have the global operations, will it matter when New York and other, you know, the U.S. financial center can play?
Well, if the regulators would get off the backs of companies that do business in the States that are listed in Canada, then we would dominate. But because certain guys at the Toronto Stock Exchange are scared about losing their Nexus card, if they just would let these guys list, like, who gives a shit?
Well, I gotta say, I lost my Nexus card, and that it does really suck.
I can't.
But thanks for reminding me.
No.
But you know, it's true. The TSX and TSX Venture blocking our largest companies, it is hurting the industry long term.
Well, if you just take a look at one company on the CDNX, and you know, full disclosure, like, I like to trade this stock. It's called Canada Royalty. We know the CEO of the company. This, you know, it's easily the highest revenue producer on the exchange. Like, they have real revenue that's outproducing everybody on the exchange, and they can't break $200 million valuation.
Because all their revenue is U.S. revenue, right?
But it's the stigma of the whole thing about delisting and all that crap, where people just can't see the blue sky in it, right? You know, regulators are there to protect the retail investor, not to stymie growth because somebody's worried about their Nexus card. I'm going to be so investigated now, I'm fucked.
So that's from the financial side. What about from the market side? I mean, Germany, almost overnight, Germany became the largest medical market in the world. You know, very quickly, that can be a big market, and Germany's a big country. And then every other EU country going together. I mean, where are the risks with the EU versus Canada? I mean, are we going to fall behind Europe?
Yeah, I think where we might fall behind if we don't speed up is on clinical trials and figuring out the medical side of this and getting, you know, products that treat and target real medical indications. What you need for that is clinical trials. That takes time, that takes money. So if governments are going to plow money behind that, or if companies are going to plow money behind that, I could potentially see Europe taking over in that respect. Canada right now is very focused on the upcoming rec market, ensuring that we have enough supply, ensuring that we might get a different variation of products. But again, medical gets left behind sometimes, unfortunately, when there's dollar signs everywhere.
So that research is actually all being done, but
It
it's
is.
so proprietary, until that formulation and that manipulation can happen so that it can be patented, we're not going to see the fruits of that.
Yeah, and so that's where you might fall to other jurisdictions that have very advanced systems for bringing plant-based medicines into a pharmaceutical regime, right? Look at Brazil as an example, or other Latin American countries that are just really good at going into the jungle and getting a plant and turning it into a medicine, and they have the infrastructure for that, right? They've done it for 100 years. So that's an area where we might fall behind if we're not careful. We need to continue to throw money into research and development to really understanding this plant, because it is a magical plant.
And I love that you're speaking to that. I will feel my job is done come the day when we can take custom compounds, formulations from cannabis and other plants together and serve those to individuals with specific needs, not just specific conditions, specific needs and wants, everything completely custom for you, all natural, non-GMO, no, genetic sequencing.
What country dominates genetics?
Israel, as far as the research.
Who
Peru
in
and
Europe-
plant-based
who in
medicine,
Europe-
I would
Who
say.
in Europe dominates?
In Europe.
Well, if we're talking about genetics only, it's probably
Spain's pretty
probably
good.
Spain and Amsterdam and that region.
Some great genetics coming out of Africa, but I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, actually Africa too.
So one thing we didn't touch on, we talked obviously the U.S., a big factor in Canada's leadership. South America, maybe Africa, the EU, obviously Israel, a lot going on there. But the most populous region of the world, Asia Pacific. What is the biggest threat from Asia to Canada's leadership, or is there a threat there?
CBD production. Their production right now for hemp is huge. CBD is like the next THC.
Well, there's a lot of variability. CBD, some activists think it's the next vitamin C. It's going to be a nutraceutical product, very unregulated potentially. We grow a lot of CBD, so it's starting. But I guess let's turn that question into: is CBD production and products, is that going to be a risk for Canadian leadership? Does it matter, or is that a separate business?
Who's going to spend the $50 million to brand and market a CBD product? I know that you believe in it, and I know you make really cool things with it, but it's not what people talk about. So where are they going to get their funding? In my world, which is different than your world, right? Like, I'm in just capital markets. Like, people get excited about THC. If China goes and grows all the CBD in the world, I don't give a shit.
Okay, back me up on something. You would probably know, or one of you guys might know. I heard medical sales were surpassing recreational sales somewhere. I read that, and I wish I remembered what state that was in. Have you guys heard that?
Can't say I know the exact state, but I mean the regulatory environment will change. Sometimes some states had, Washington State originally had pharma medical sales; they were unregulated, and so regulatory pressures will change that. But I guess your point, Anthony, you're really saying that the retail investor, the investors generally, they care about THC. THC is what is going to drive
because they're
global
gonna
domination.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, like, she makes a CBD drink, and it's an awesome drink, and I
There's
loved it.
THCA in there, it's just not activated. It's a full spectrum beverage that you drink.
Yeah, but
If you light it on fire first before you drink it, you'll get
I
high.
don't. Yeah, I think if you take a bite of lemon, then you get high, right?
If you put citric acid in it, it activates it like a
See,
lot like
I grew up in
reishi.
New Brunswick, right? So we knew all the tricks how to get high.
Well, you guys are really growing on me, but unfortunately we're out of time. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck.